I'm getting to that point where it's been like, if I express myself, am I being too vulnerable? Am I being too open? And if I don't express myself, then I'm suppressing all of these feelings, and then eventually it shows out in different ways.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession. Welcome to another episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a global podcast that has now had almost 200,000 downloads over the last 2 years. I am very excited today. I'm joined by my guest, Lara Luck, who is a food writer, recipe developer, food stylist, food consultant, mother, entrepreneur, just general all-round hero. We've been chatting for 15 minutes straight. I said, well, we've got to stop.
Yeah.
Hit record and we can actually capture some of the conversation. Lara, over the years, has written and developed content for food brands, including Waitrose, Ocado, and Asda, to name a few. And Lara's heritage is from beautiful Caribbean islands of St. Lucia and Grenada, where her food and ideas reflect this, along with being born and raised in the UK. Lara, there's so much that we can talk about, but firstly, thank you ever so much for joining me on this morning's podcast.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to apologize in advance because I got out of bed. I didn't even do my hair today.
Oh, no.
I look like something.
Johnny Bravo there.
It does look like Johnny Bravo. Yeah, or like one of those hideous Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura type films. So, where in the world are you joining us from?
So I'm joining from Essex. I'm in Epping, so yeah.
Nice. And it's Friday today. We've just been chatting. Fridays are your chill days, right?
Yes. Fridays, I like it to kind of be quite chilled, can kind of do stuff around the house, sort the kids out in the morning, stuff like that. So yeah, just like to keep my Fridays relatively free, get ready for the weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, and weekends with kids, it's always fun trying to keep them entertained, especially. How many children and how old?
So I've got 3 lovely ones. I've got 2 girls and a boy. So I've got a 14-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. So they keep me super busy, keep me on my toes.
Someone always said to me, they said when I was younger and I had young kids, and they said, you think it's hard now. You wait until they hit their teenage years.
Oh, yeah. Different ball game. Hormones. This person's not talking to this person. Yeah, it's just a whole load of drama with that. And then, yeah, trying to juggle the 2 little ones that are just always just like, no, he took that. No, mommy. Da-da-da-da. Like, yeah, it's very yin and yang. So, yeah, it's a lot, but it's fun. It's nice as well. Like they've got their own little characteristics and stuff like that. So yeah, they're a joy to have.
As any parent would say.
Exactly.
2 gritted teeth.
Yes.
So Lara, we touched upon this briefly, but I was really interested to have a conversation with you. We've spoken to a couple of people in the past who have had careers and then pursued a career in the culinary world rather than in reverse, which is fantastic to see. But we've never had someone from a HR, human resources and people background who have decided to take the leap and come into becoming a chef and immerse themselves in the world of food and culinary delight. So how long were you working in HR for, and who were you working for, or what sort of establishments?
To be fair, if I look at it, I was working in recruitment, HR, probably for at least over 12 years at least. I remember as soon as I turned 16, it was like, okay, parents were like, get a job. I remember my first job being in Clark's shoe shop. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I've got my little job and in $3.75 an hour. Like I was like super, super happy. And then just decided a few years after that, like, do you know what? I actually want to kind of get into like having an office job, doing the whole like 9 to 5. And then, yeah, through that, worked at places kind of like at Hayes Recruitment, Scotiabank. And then before I transitioned onto kind of going into this cookery journey, was working at UCL So dealing with kind of like the recruitment of all the doctors, surgeons and stuff like that. So it was very kind of, we had our computer systems, our CRM or whatever it is, computer systems that we would use. We'd know how to recruit. We'd know what the requirements were. We knew what we had to do for like signing people in, making sure right to work was correct. It was all very kind of like toe the line. Nothing really exciting would happen. As mentioned before, unless you get like a funny doctor or character like come in or something like that. It was quite relaxed. And I think I got to a point where, do you know what, like this is comfortable. I'm starting to get a bit like itchy feet, starting to get a bit bored. And I remember, you know, you always get that one person at work that brings the cakes in, or you're that one person that everyone's like, oh, what have you got in your lunchbox? Like, I was that person who's like, okay, it's Friday. Okay, let me bring some muffins in, or let me bring some cookies in or whatever. And a few people at previous workplaces was like, oh, you should try and do this on the side, or like you're a little bit kind of wasted here. And yeah, I think the magazines, the food magazines, love the food magazines. They were always my go-to or my inspiration. Like, oh, what am I going to do this weekend? Or just introducing me to new cultures and new cuisines. And then, yeah, I just got to a point where I was like, this stuff looks interesting. The pictures look amazing. Like, how do they make these things look so amazing and striking and things like that? And then I just thought, you know what, let me get this. Who's the editor? Have a look at the back, contact them. And I just contacted loads of them. I was like, do you know what, I'm really interested in food. I think at that time when I was interested, I was pregnant with my son. So that was my second child. And I was just kind of like, do I really want to come back to the workplace Monday to Friday with 2 kids? Is there something that I can do where I can be more creative? And food was my go-to thing. Even just when I was like living at home, like, and I was on my own, I would like be on the high street on the weekend, getting all like my shopping just to come home and cook for me. Or just, I remember like watching like Lorraine Pascal on like a Saturday morning with her baking episodes, just being like, oh my gosh, this is so inspiring. So yeah, so I just backed myself. I said to my husband, I was like, do you know what? I want to do this and I'm going to do it. Like, it's going to happen. And lo and behold, I reached out to loads of people and got an email back from someone. They was like, look, we're doing a shoot. Why don't you come and see what we do? And I didn't know there was such a thing as food photography. I didn't know there was such a thing as food styling. And then they actually spoke to me about their journey and their story. And I was just like, okay, this sounds like something that I want to pursue. And then it just kind of like, our industry is quite small, especially the food styling industry. So it's just kind of like word of mouth. If someone's kind of looking for assistance, they might be like, oh, I worked with this person. Here's her number, or here's his number. Like, you reach out to them and see if they're free. And then that's where I kind of got opportunities to assist some really cool stylists that then I was on shoots like Slimming World shoots, Waitrose shoots, commercial delivery shoots. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting to cook and I'm getting the exposure of all of this. And that was amazing. And then COVID hit. So it was just kind of like, okay, everyone's at home. We can't obviously go out because our work is going out into studios and there's at least a good handful of us doing stuff. Cooking, you've got photographer's assistant, a food stylist assistant, a director, just loads of people, prop stylist. And then it was like, okay, well, what can I do whilst I'm at home? And at the time, I remember I was saying to my husband, I was like, oh, I've got like 600 something followers on Instagram. This is so good. And he was like, yeah, like, it's good. But like, have you seen the people that you want to aspire to? And then when I looked at their stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, this person's got 1,000 followers. This person's got this. And he was just kind of like, do you know what? Why don't you take this time to just work on your page and work on your social media? And that's exactly what I did. And it was just sharing recipes from home because at the time we're all at home. No one can do anything. Your supermarket's your best friend at this point. So just share recipes and share inspiration, and it was just fun, family filled recipes. And then, just started building from there, and then being able to kind of put like a Caribbean twist on certain things and just kind of like push my culture and my heritage, like where I'm from. And then, just been building. So I'm the type of person that I realize I don't like to be in one spot. So I'm glad that I'm able to recipe develop. I'm glad that I'm able to chef. I'm glad that I'm able to just speak to you about this. I'm glad that I'm able to go into commercial kitchens and be a prep chef. It's just so fun to have like a versatile week. So it's so cool for me because no week's ever the same. So it's good.
Yeah. I feel that. I have a couple of questions for you. So first and foremost, and we'll come on to your transition into chef skills, etc., and the stages that you've done. But so in a previous life, I used to be a food photographer. So I ran it alongside working as a sales manager in the food wholesale industry. So for me, it was great. I used to be able to build a relationship with a client. They'd become my client and I'd supply them with some of the best fine dining ingredients there was. And then as soon as 5 o'clock hit and my job stopped, I'd then whip out my camera and then we'd do an evening shoot. And then I'd get to eat it afterwards. So all in all, I completed my life. I was happy, but there's so much more that goes into food styling, and I was awful at it. Like took me a few years to understand things like the color wheel and to make sure there was a juxtaposition of plates, etc. But I guess my question is that for those who are out there who are taking photos on their phone, or perhaps they're looking at trying to improve the quality and how their dishes portrayed or represented in photos or images, are there any things that you've learned over the last few years that you've gone, these are your top 2 or top 3 tips that you must do in order to get a great shot?
I think in order to get a great shot, I know it's pretty old school, but like you can't beat a good recipe book. If you've got like a timeless recipe book that exactly what it is timeless, the shots are always going to be timeless. You can pick it up at any time and you're like, wow, that shot just always lands. I'm always like, okay, well, if I like that shot or if I like that particular book, who shot the book? And let me look at their work. They might have a certain type of style or lighting or things like that they might use. So that I would probably recommend, just looking at who's in your industry and looking at, do you shoot similar to them? If you do, or if you like how they shoot, it could be a case of reaching out to them or just looking at their books for like extra development for yourself. And then I just think, I know it sounds crazy, but finding a good prop house and just being able to walk through the prop house and just having an appreciation for the different colors, the different inspiration that you could get, and their like expertise, the people in the prop house, like their expertise and the things that they know. Because 9 times out of 10, you could go there and be like, look, I'm doing this shoot, and they'll know exactly what they'll think is good or what would complement your shoot. And sometimes you're just like, wow, oh my gosh, like I'll just take everything, and obviously can't really do that. Yeah. So I just think just having that knowledge, like you're talking about the wheel for like colors, tones, palettes, but then always making sure like when you're doing a shot, do they know that that's a Lara Luck shot, or do they know that that's such and such shot? Okay, yeah, Lara's creative, she's vibrant, the colors pop. Yeah, I know it's her without knowing that it's her, if that makes sense. That's the kind of that's the point, the stage that you want to get to. And I just think just being able to kind of learn from others, because I think for me, it's just been as simple as being able to be in an atmosphere. Like I used to remember when we used to do the Waitrose shoots, and I'm going to give a little shout out to the art director, Ruth Tyson. Like she was amazing. She would come out and she'd be like, look, there's a book for you, We're doing a 3-day shoot. Everything was put together. All her color palettes were put together. Like she kind of already knew how she wanted the vision to look. So I'm just looking through, I'm like, oh my God. So it's making my job easier to obviously support the stylist whilst I'm assisting and I'm cooking and stuff like that. But her attention to detail It was so juicy. It was so good, like her attention to detail. So I've always kind of remembered people like her because she made it look like it was nothing. But to me, I know I'd be kind of like, okay, I need to copy paste that and do whatever. But she always just made it look so eloquent and just made it look so good. So I just think definitely always working around good people that have had that knowledge and wisdom and have been in that field or been in that game for longer than you pick up so many good hints and tips. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. And you can't underestimate things like textures as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, my key thing when I walked into a restaurant, if I was doing some shots there, I'd always look at the floor. And if they had like a really old painted wooden floor with floor beams, I'd be like, your food's going on the floor straight away. Like, no disrespect, but if you've got a blue plate and a white floor, hello, we're in for fun. So yeah,
and that's attention to detail, right? Just like knowing what's around. Most people would have just walked on the floor and just wouldn't have noticed that. But when you've got that attention to detail, like you appreciate the smallest things. So yeah.
Yeah. No one wants to see a curry or a soup on a dark brown table. Just with a white napkin, just like placed in the sides. It has to have something and garnishing. So you enjoyed cooking and putting together recipes at home and also looking at the creative styles that people had. How did that translate when you started doing staging over maternity leave? How was the reality of working in a commercial kitchen versus the dream of taking this on as a career?
Now that you say that question, I just saw it as like, I'm in my element. Like, wow, this is fun. We're doing a pastry or we're doing a cake and these are the raw ingredients and this is what I've made. And then someone's purchased it. That's how I viewed it. And I just viewed it as, you know what, I'm here and I'm learning. I'm getting these opportunities to learn and I can learn these things and then I can challenge myself creatively and say, okay, how would I do that different? Or what did I like about the taste or what did I like about the flavor of that? And it would always kind of revert back to, okay, what Caribbean spices or what Caribbean flavors can I do to make this look great? So it could have been as simple as, okay, we have like your star gin and we're making a vanilla cake or whatever, or we're making like Madeleines or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, cool. They use a vanilla buttercream frosting. Okay, if I do this at home, maybe I could make a rum spice frosting or like a coconut or pina colada. Like always trying to, this texture wise, the recipe's great. I can use that recipe for the sponge or whatever. The buttercream's great, but what added flavor? Because I'm all about flavor. I love vanilla. You know, a lot of people are like, vanilla soap. No, if you get the right vanilla bean, that's sometimes for me, that's all you need. But then it's kind of like, okay, vanilla and what? Vanilla and lemon, vanilla and rum, vanilla, and just trying to kind of switch things up that makes when someone tastes it, they're like, it gets their brain thinking. And that's what I think, you know, when you're saying, okay, that transition from like HR to cooking, why or where, when I look at both of them, you have to be a people person. So HR requires you to be that first point of contact when someone comes in to their new workspace. You're going to be that person that's going to welcome them in, make sure they have everything that they need, sign off everything. If they have any questions, you're that first person. And I guess the same is with like how I feel about cooking and recipe developing. When I'm doing it for a client or a brand or whatever, everything for me always has to be personable. It has to be individual to that client so that they know that I've really listened to like their requirements, what they've needed, but also just doing that extra going like above and beyond. Like, okay, I know you only asked for 5 options, but I've given you 10 just to you guys to have a discussion around the table of that. Or like, we've done this shot, but we've also done this shot. Which one do you prefer? Or you can take both. Just always being, I think anyone obviously working in our industry, you're there to serve. You're there to want people to have like a really fun, creative experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. HR is very much process driven, and there are many sectors that are, but actually hospitality is about storytelling. It's about conveying messaging and demonstrating creativity and flexibility and ingenuity, right? And I think that's the bug that bites most people, which is you could work in a call center or work for a bank, but it's not quite the same.
No. Yeah.
To have that, and to have that complete autonomy of flair as well, because someone might say, well, pair in pineapple with vanilla or rum with vanilla. God, that's terrible. But then there'll be 100 other people go, what a fucking great idea. And there is no right or wrong. Like it's all up to individual preferences and profiles, isn't it, really? So,
yeah.
Do you use tonka beans at all? A completely weird question, but do you use tonka beans?
I have used tonka beans when doing like recipe development and stuff like that. I quite like them, to be honest with you. That umami type taste and stuff. And even just the colour of them as well, that rich darkness. Like for me, that just oozes luxury. So I've used them before.
I've always had it in the back of my mind that there's going to be some sort of revival for tonka beans, because they used to get used a lot during the 70s and 80s, and no one's really ever using them as an alternative to vanilla anymore. I feel sad about that.
Maybe we can do something about that then, can't we?
I'm thinking of a t-shirt design, give tonka a chance. So let's talk a little bit about your experiences with mental health, if we can, if you're comfortable with that. Obviously, you have built an incredible career and a complete change of direction with your career choice. But I know that it wasn't always easy, especially after the birth of, was it your first or your second?
Second.
So this transition period happened at the same time as quite a difficult time for you as well, right? Yeah,
it did. But it's kind of like almost you're in fight or flight mode, they say. Yeah, so it's just, hey, I'm doing this, but I'm actually dismissing something else, but I don't even realize in the moment that I was dismissing it until it got to a point, like it'd be simple things. Something would drop and then just like crying for no reason, or I don't know how to work the thing. And you're just like, why am I crying? And then I'm guessing, obviously, taking into consideration, just had a child, hormones are all over the place, and certain things that I didn't experience in my first pregnancy or first birth, I'm experiencing different things, a different baby, different challenges. I felt like my son was probably more demanding of me as opposed to my first child. So my daughter. So it was just trying to transition all of that, plus then me deciding, you know what, I don't want to do HR anymore and I'm going to pursue this. So in the moment, I'm guessing like anyone that's probably going to listen to this will be like, what was you thinking? Like, who does that? But do you know what? I believed in myself. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And I think part of me wanted to do it just as well for that flexibility. I didn't want to go back to a 9 to 5. And I thought to myself, if I don't do something now that I'm actually passionate about, then when am I actually going to do it? So it was all these questions, but then having to deal with, okay, I'm feeling these different emotions. I don't know. At one point I couldn't even really express them. So my face or my body language might be a certain way, but I physically just couldn't get the words out because I didn't understand it myself. And I think it was at one point where a friend, I feel like she saw me and she saw her. And we had a bit of a chat and she was just like, do you feel this way? And that was the first time I felt like someone understood what I was feeling and what I was going through. And then, now just kind of been on that journey to not shy away from certain things, because I know that there's a lot of stigmas that do come with even just expressing how you feel. Like even sometimes I'm sure as a man, like, oh, you can't say that, you're meant to be this way or you're meant to be whatever. And it's kind of like, well, we all have feelings, but it's kind of like we're very much like, oh, you can't express yourself. And I'm getting to that point where it's been like, if I express myself, am I being too vulnerable? Am I being too open. And if I don't express myself, then I'm suppressing all of these feelings. And then eventually it shows out in different ways. So I guess it's just having those levels of maturity to sit down with myself and have those uncomfortable, not conversations with myself, but get the help that I felt that I've needed. So then I'm like, okay, I understand why I did that today, or I understand that. And for me, that's been priceless.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
Yeah, and I think I'm lucky. I'm a male. I've never had to go through things like postpartum depression, and luckily I haven't received sexism or anything like this at all in my life, and I'm very privileged from that perspective. But I think that there is a lot more conversations that are needed, and in terms of that vulnerability, and I think more open dialogue. Like, we have an ambassador in the States, Colleen, incredible human being, who has talked about her challenges post-pregnancy with her mental health. And you can see there are people who are looking and going, oh, this is uncomfortable to hear about. But for every one or two person going, it's uncomfortable, the power that her vulnerability has about discussing these things openly and being true and authentic to herself is stimulating conversation for like another 10, 15, 20 people off the back of it. And I think it's important to continue to try and push that conversation forward, really. And as you say, if you've got an itch that needs scratching in terms of like, oh, I know that if I suppress this, it's going to eat me up inside, then you can be true and authentic to yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's been, and it's continuing to be a journey, because now that I've got 3 kids, I want them to be very open with me and feel like they can talk about anything and everything, even like I'm having a bad day or I just don't feel right. And it's not something that we as a family then gonna sweep under, oh, you're fine, you'll be all right, sleep it off or whatever. Like, no, really get down to the bottom of your feelings. So I think both me and my husband, we're trying to juggle that, especially like with them, because it's kind of like, well, I've been through certain things and I wouldn't want my daughter, say, for example, or even my son to go through those things. And you, as a parent, you want to be able to kind of spot them, or at least know that, you know what, they feel comfortable enough that they can come to you and say, like, this doesn't feel right, or this is happening, instead of kind of suppressing it. Because I've been there where you feel like you've had to kind of suppress stuff and like put that smile on, or even just for the sake of sometimes being silly, like just worrying about, okay, if I'm at work and I just say I'm not feeling great, when you're freelance, that could be the difference between someone's like, yeah, we're not going to use her like again. Yeah. And sometimes it shouldn't be like that. But I know for me, I always have this thing in my head that like you're only as good as your last job. And I feel like when you're freelancing or you're self-employed, your work and your ethos and how you come across, people are either going to speak good of it or going to speak bad of it. And that could be the difference between your name going around and it being positive or being negative. And remember, that's your bread, that's your money coming in. So whereas, like you said, when you're working Monday to Friday, regardless of whether you do good or bad, you're still going to get paid at the end of the month. So I think with me, that's another thing that kind of drives me. And that's another reason why, even though there might be times or months where it might not be as great as what I kind of would have earned in the workforce, for me, there's no better feeling than knowing you've earned every single penny of that, because you've put absolutely everything. Whereas when you're like, okay, I can just type this off and just send this, and then I've got the rest of the afternoon to myself. For me personally, there's no motivation. So those are things like where like, yeah, I know I earned that £10, or I know I earned that because I worked my socks off. I gave absolutely everything. So yeah, things like that helped me to stay kind of motivated.
And thank you for sharing. And I guess the question that I have is that, how do you feel that relationship during that difficult time influenced your decision to make a sudden right turn and go for something, to seize the moment and to trust yourself and back yourself to try something completely new?
Do you know what it is? I think sometimes you have to have a good network around you. And my husband, he's like self-employed, he's an entrepreneur, he does his own thing as well. So I think sometimes with us, like we get certain things, like he might be like, yeah, like I need to seize this opportunity. And it's kind of like, there's not going to be any pushback. There's going to be more of, okay, have you analysed like every angle or whatever? But then it's always like, shoot your shot, basically. So It was just, I just wanted to be selfish for once and be like, do you know what? I really love doing this. Let me try and make a go of it. And if it doesn't happen, then at least I won't be wondering like, what if? But I saw that maternity as my opening, because I thought to myself, okay, if I break this down, say I did take the year off, didn't do anything, then when I went back, and then say I did go back, then when am I actually going to find the time to actually really start or train myself or learn more about food now that I've got 2 kids as well?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working 5 days, or like if they give me, 4 days a week, like when am I actually, they always say that saying, everyone has the same 24 hours of the day, depends on what you do with it. But yeah, half of that I'll be spending sleeping by the time I've gone to bed at like 10 p.m. But yeah, it's just kind of like, I just saw that as like an moment. That was my opportunity. Like, if I'm not going to do this now, when do I get that thing? Like a whole year to kind of just manage my 2 kids and manage the family, but then also get that experience and see if it goes anywhere. And fortunately enough for me, it did. So then the transition was easy, but I think that transition, it happened with a lot of thought. It happened with a lot of hundreds of emails before getting that one opportunity, because literally I think I sent something like about 77 emails to different people, and I got hardly anyone got back to me, and then the rest were no's, and it was that one, yeah, we're doing this, why don't you come in? And I was like, okay, cool. So from that opportunity, I kind of like haven't looked back, and then just looked at ways to just evolve myself as a person. I don't have the luxury of like a team behind me or this marketing person here and that person there. I literally have to think on my feet and think about ways that I want to like progress myself. And yeah, I feel like I've just always been creative, to be honest with you. And food, I use that now as my tool to just like express myself, talk about my journey, and any way that I can incorporate it within certain things, 100% gets incorporated in. So yeah, I'm grateful that I can do that.
Nice. Well, you used the term briefly for I'm fortunate that, but let's just take a moment to recognize that you've hustled hard. One thing I notice in people who set up their own businesses or freelance or multiple businesses is that in order for you to create something for yourself, and it's not always going to be successful, but in order for you to create something, you have to generate mass energy that goes beyond what we would normally seem possible. So, it would be fortunate if someone walked up to you in the street and gave you £10,000.
Yeah.
No prize attached. Here it is, because you didn't do anything, right? Yeah. But actually, you have to generate forward momentum, and the only way you're going to do that is by doing something more than anyone else would do. And kudos to you for doing that as well. 77 emails and the rejection, but it just goes to show that one step, that one,
that one. Yeah, you just always need that 1 year. I think your support system is quite key, because a lot of the things that I have been able to do, don't think like if I had my husband or partner in crime, like I wouldn't be able to do those things, or just someone that gives me that, did you look at this? And I'm like, actually, like, no, I didn't. And just helps to elevate me even more. And like those things as well, like you can't put a price on that. That's priceless for me. So I just think, having a good team around you, good people around you that support what you're doing. It could be friends, family, colleagues, or whatever. But then you have to be that driving force for yourself. You can't sit on your laurels. And I think that's another thing that I get a weird motivation from, like, okay, what's next? Like, what am I going to do next? And I think for me, when I get to that point where that starts to become difficult or there's no motivation, then I know that, okay, maybe I'm done. And that's happened with certain places. Like I've been somewhere and I'm like, like my time's drawing to an end here. So I'm okay with like ending things or finishing things, because I know that, okay, there's going to be something better for me, or this is meant to end so that I can continue or do something else. There's always a silver lining somewhere. So
infinite possibility mindset, right? Like, okay, what's next coming around the corner, rather than
exactly
dragging it out. So talking about what's next and coming around the corner, a nice little segue. You mentioned briefly before we started the podcast about an exciting project that you've got going on. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit of that with the listeners and educate me as well on your learnings whilst developing this project.
Yeah, so this has kind of been like, not in the making, but just something that came along whilst I was doing my proposal for a book. So I kind of was writing my proposal up and then sent it out, got a bit of interest from a few publishers, and then had conversations with them. And then there was a snippet from one of the recipes, and it was kind of to do with just trying to delve in a bit more about like my background and my family and stuff like that. And then a question was asked and I was like, just a bit stumped on the question. It made me think, okay, I know I'm Caribbean, I know we're from these islands, but what does it mean? Basically, it's kind of like, okay, I know I'm born in the UK, but what does that mean? Like, what does it stand for? Or just like, okay, I know we cook curry goat, or I know we make oxtail, but where did that come from? Where did that originate from? Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we cook the way that we do? So I had like all of these questions, and then it led me to really seek and think about just my identity as a person of Caribbean heritage, because I know that most people, maybe from the outside looking in, if you're not from the Caribbean, you might think, okay, all of the islands are kind of very much the same. But there's little things that St. Lucia might do different cooking wise to Jamaica, or there might be certain spices or ingredients that one island might use that another island might not, or they might all have their different twists. So lo and behold, I've already mentioned that I love sending off an email. So I've kind of always felt that when it's come to identity, slavery has always been spoken about a lot. The transatlantic slavery system, that always seems to be a topic. But for me, I was like, okay, well, surely something happened before then. This couldn't have just been the start of Caribbean culture or even African culture. So it's led me to do a bit of investigating. So I shotted off a couple of emails, and I decided to just reach out to a couple of museums and just say, look, want to maybe do a project or write something to do with culture, food and identity. Do you have anything that I could possibly look at or investigate a bit more, or just get a better understanding? So it's fortunate enough that one of the museums came back to me and was like, oh, what you're doing sounds really, really cool. I met up with one of the curators that works at the museum, and she was so sweet. She actually took me on like a personal tour of like the whole museum. So it felt like having like this little private tour of everything, and just little things that I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. So I'm in my 40s and I'm like, if I didn't know this, then how many of my peers really know this? So then I then got in contact with another organisation, and they're called the National Windrush Museum, and they do a lot of stuff to highlight the Windrush era and the transition of Caribbeans coming over in regards to helping with like World War II and the rebuilding of the UK. So then I reached out to them also, and then lo and behold, we are now going to be doing an exhibition with the Maritime Museum, which is about food, culture and identity, what all those intertwining interparts mean. So we're looking at that and doing an exhibition, and then how that era has cemented themselves in the UK and the culinary identity, their involvement in basically British food, and how that's come to where we are today. So the exhibition starts in October, and at the moment we're in the process of putting things together, and we're having a launch in the middle of October, and then it will be open to the public, and it will be running, I believe, until June 2026. So the plan is to have the space where people can come in, learn more about the islands and learn about the connections between Caribbean culinary food and how that's affected the UK and the things that, you know, people might have brought over, or just as well with some of the older Windrush era, just finding out their stories, how did they adapt to certain things, and more so like the food side of it. Obviously, you come from an island and you're accustomed to a certain way of eating, a certain way of cooking. How did you adapt your ways to kind of look at the surroundings that were around you and to kind of work with those things? And then just being able to have the space as a really positive space to educate, teach, and for people to learn something new. And then we're going to try to organise a few workshops where hopefully we can get some schools in, you know, speak to young ones, and just for them to have like a really good time in the space. And yeah, the space is going to be for everyone. It's just going to be a fun learning experience that it's the start to hopefully other things or other projects that can follow on. So I'm super excited about being involved in that. And the irony is that I'm learning through this whole process as well, a bit more about my history, a bit more about my elders and maybe why they done certain things that the way they're done, and just learning about the different tribes that were on the islands there before, just their industriousness of like even like their fishery and stuff like that. And then now you're like, okay, well, that's why we do certain things the way we do it now, or that's why we have green seasoning, because they just farmed off the land. Everything they farmed off the island. They didn't have a supermarket or a thing to kind of go in. So it's just talking to others, just like I'm talking to you, and just showing that appreciation, because I wouldn't be half the person that I am or half the chef that I am if I didn't learn from my mum, who learned from her aunt, whose aunt who learned from, you know, so it all trickles back. So I'm super excited for this.
It sounds really cool and well done, because it's probably no mean, I've never put together an exhibition, but it sounds no mean feat to put that together, but also the research element as well. Like, yeah, must be so interesting from a storytelling capacity, because as you say, you follow recipes that have been passed down by generations, but there's never really, unless people have found out as to why the process or the method was like that, there's never been really any rhyme or reason to it other than this is the way we've always done things. But actually what you've managed to do is go all the way back to when these were commonplace and being used on the island, all self-foraged, all sort of self-taught and passed around, it must be really quite profound, right? To understand, right, that's why we marinate it for that long, or that's why we use these particular spices.
There's been a couple of times when I've been given information and it kind of takes you aback. Like, for instance, breadfruit is a carb that like a lot of Caribbeans eat, and you can boil breadfruit. You can normally, I remember when I went to St. Lucia, my aunt would always like grill it on a fire, like an open fire. And it has that certain tinge, has that certain, now that I'm reminiscing, that certain smell to it. And I've actually found out that breadfruit wasn't originally grown on the Caribbean islands. It was brought over by, I believe, like one of the slave masters from that went to Tahiti. And it was actually brought over from there to the islands, but the soil's quite fertile. So then it was able to grow on the islands. So, okay, when I go to my local like Caribbean fruit and veg market, and that you associate that with the islands, but knowing that the history of that ingredient actually falls back somewhere else, it's then good to, I want to be able to give that country, or give, I don't want to dismiss that, because that's where it's traveled. As we all know, like we're all traveled, our roots may start here, but then I'm sure there's been some diversions or turns or whatever. So even that took me aback, because it's like, oh wow, like this staple that's such a big thing in the Caribbean, or that we love to eat or love to do. So then when I'm doing things like my supper clubs, this is a perfect opportunity that if, say, I was to like, this is the creative part where it's like, okay, I'm going to do a dish with this. I'm going to change the dish on its head, but then it's also a great talking point to say, did you know? And then it just, the whole thing that you were saying with the storytelling, it's not just, okay, you're coming in, I'm taking your order, you eat your order and you leave. There's an education and storytelling behind it, so that, like I said, even with my supper clubs, like people always leave knowing something or understanding something that they might not have ever thought about or known before, and then just have a better appreciation for it.
So nourishing for the belly and also for the brain at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a really important and a very serious question to ask you, Lara, which is, when is the TV show coming out?
Oh, wow. Let's put that out there. I don't know. Any takers? Anyone? I'd love to. Do you know what? I'd love to be able to do something like that. And if it's going to happen, then might have to bring me on here again, and we could be like, do you remember that time we were talking about that? I'd love for that to happen. But I think even now at the moment, just being able to, I've got a few ideas that I'm running through with someone, and we're going to start doing a bit more stuff on the socials and stuff like that to get a bit more, my vibe out there, a bit more fun, mixed with a bit of like education and just fun stuff, but then still derived around that. So all I'll say for now is watch this space. Let's see.
I have absolutely no doubt. I mean, it sounds fascinating. And if you need someone, if you need an assistant to go to St. Lucia with you and
of course, yeah.
Carry your bag. I'm just saying I might know someone.
Yeah, okay, cool. Noted.
Just throwing it out there. I'm not going to send any emails, but you
can bring your camera.
Listen, I'll bring my camera. Do you know what? It's such a flashback. I saw. So back, I've been doing this now 7 years, Burnt Chef Project, and I was a photographer for 5 years before that. When I was in London recently at the XL for a show, I just bumped into a chef that I used to do food photography for, and used to spend hours in his kitchen just putting the world to rights. No. He was like, do you still pick up your camera? And I was like, dude, my camera, you can't see it now, but my lens is right behind me. My camera and my lenses have been just gathering dust on a shelf for so many years now. He was like, look, if ever it doesn't work out at Burnt Chef, you can come and take food photography for our pub group and stuff like this. And for a brief moment, I was like, oh, do you know what? I would love to just spend some time in a studio or a kitchen and taking some shots. But if the offer's there to take some shots in St. Lucia, then, I'll dig deep and I'll find...
You'll find a way.
I'll find a way. I'm a resilient fellow. I found this incredibly interesting and insightful, Lara. And thank you for sharing about your vulnerability and your heritage and your journey. And I'm hoping that this inspires other people to either take a first step into doing something that they want to do, or to learning more about themselves, or to, I don't know, just expressing as a human being and just making the world a better place. So I appreciate that. And is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with? Any nuggets or gems that you think?
Firstly, thank you so much, Chris, for your time and just for us having this chat. This in itself is therapy, to be fair, just being able to talk and, listen to one another and go back and forth. So no, I really appreciate the time. But I just think if there's any male or female, but more to the female, if there's any women out there that are passionate about anything, it doesn't necessarily have to be about food, but you're just passionate about anything, and obviously you've got kids or you don't have kids, I just don't let anything stop you. There's nothing wrong with trying. I think you're always wondering what if. I think that will hurt you more than knowing that you gave something a go and it was successful or it wasn't successful. At least you tried. So I would just say, just be a trier. Just be a trier and see which way the wind goes, but don't ever take no for an answer. There's always a different way. Someone can say no, fine, okay, we'll go left and I'll do this. Just persevere and just be your own cheerleader. So yeah, get those pom-poms out.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point to end on. And again, I can't speak from experience because I've always come from, I say privilege. I'm a white male in my early 40s now. So I've never really experienced struggle or strife. But I think that, I hear so often about fulfilling the role of a mother or a woman in society. And that often there's all those years of suppression. And I think that actually there are still desires, there are still wants, and there are still those itches that I think that people should be encouraged and supported. And we're seeing the rise of so many community groups like the Women in Hospitality group and other sort of
they're amazing
teams, which are just perfect and they're ideal, but there's always more. And I think that it's better to have tried and failed, which I don't think is a bad thing, than to never have tried at all, because as you said perfectly, you don't want to end up wondering what if.
Exactly. I think even the whole failure thing, failure teaches you something. So be prepared to get things wrong, say things wrong, do things wrong, but it's all in how you take it, and it's all in how you embrace those failures. And like I said, same, I'm in my early 40s and I just feel like there's no better time to be 40. I'm sorry, because you have that balance of acceptance for yourself, knowing that you're okay to work on yourself and not embracing your number, not embracing that, okay, I'm in this 40 bracket, I can't do this or whatever. I think when I look at most entrepreneurs, they actually didn't start going forward or tracking forward until they were in their 40s or mid 40s anyway. So it's okay to make those mistakes in your 20s and your 30s and then bring on the 40s. So yeah, I'm excited, like I said, for this project. I'm excited as well for whatever the future holds as well. So yeah.
And if people wanted to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Food by Lara Luck.
Good. I just took a look at your page actually during this, so let's give Lara a follow as well. Let's get up to that 11,000.
Yes.
Let's go.
Follow me.
Lara, thank you ever so much. And
thank you so much for your time. All right, take care.